and gentlemen, what's going on? Alright, so basically today what I wanted to do was go through and continue my tutorial series with Python and GTK. Last time we went through and worked on doing the GtkTreeView, and we were making a program that goes through and allows us to edit the path variable. And so today what we're going to do is go through and finish that up by applying the appropriate functions and processes for the appropriate functions. First off, I'm going to go ahead and actually open up the Glade file here. And from there, what I want to do is go through and actually just kind of quickly modify this button here to have a proper tooltip event. I forgot to do that last time, and so 1, 2, 3. So I forgot to do that last time, but you know we're going to do that now so that the button is appropriate. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up the file we were editing. And let's go ahead and just start basically doing the whole process for adding an entry. So really this is pretty straightforward to do. What we do is go ahead, I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go through and copy this. And from there, we pretty much have all that we need to go through and add the entry, or an entry, when we add the path appropriately. So what we're going to do though is of course reference the input box, and so I'm going to go through and get the ID for that. And in fact, I'm actually going to go through and change that from just to add path to be actually to add path entry. So I'm going to go Control S to save that, and then put that here, and then here. And we're going to get rid of entry and just set up txt. Okay. Now remember that this is an input. Or entry. A widget. Okay. So to get text, we covered that actually like 2 or 3 episodes back. Episodes, yes, episodes. 2 or 3 episode tutorials, I guess, back. And that's just by going through and doing get _text, and then parentheses, and then we're also going to go through and do strip to strip it of any trailing spaces or not dashes, but spaces, new lines at the beginning, and then of course at the end. From there, what we need to do is actually go through and ensure that this actually has an appropriate entry or value. What I would do is I'm just going to do actually using the OS module that we imported from last time, and we're going to do path, okay, and then do is dir, and so from there we just give it the argument, and then do colon, and then of course fix this, and then change this to that, and we now have the ability to add an entry to our list or tree view. Okay, so if I go ahead and pull up an terminal and then expand that appropriately for everyone here, we can do Python 3 and then main tab and enter, and you'll see of course that we have our widget. And in fact, I'm gonna, come on, please expand this. So I'm gonna expand this here a little bit, and then from there I'm gonna take the path that we're currently working from and add that to the list or tree. Okay, so boom, and then I do plus, and as you'll see it got added, and we can of course click that multiple times to get it added accordingly. Alright, and so we can also, by the way, as you'll see, when we do is directory and we're checking on it, if we give it, you know, a bad name, nothing's going to happen. So obviously, as a user experience, from a user experience standpoint, this is not truly optimal. What really should happen is that a kind of like bubble probably should pop up and say that that's an invalid input. And we're not going to do that for this particular episode. Yes, in this episode. We're not going to do that for this part of the tutorial, but when I introduce new widgets or other widgets, there'll actually be an instance where I come back to this to actually show you all how to kind of maybe make it look like it's a pop-up bubble or something like that. Alright, but we do have the paths adding, and so now what we want to do is go through and excuse me, delete paths. And by the way, actually, before I even continue with that, I want to take this here, and I'm going to just separate these two processes. And so we're going to go through and do set up treeview. I'm just going to take that, Control C, Control S to save, and I'm going to do new line, self dot setup tree view. And the biggest reason why I'm doing that is so that we have that separated. It's technically, they are, the actions themselves are a little bit they're not. They really should be kind of split apart into their own kind of sub functions, so that when you can extend it, you can extend it from that function or method than from the other one. Anyway, I'm going to move also bashrc path down because we're going to go through and add some other tertiary variables, and so we kind of want to group them together since they're a little bit more logically ordered that way instead. All right, so now we want to go through and, of course, delete an entry. And so to really do that, what we really need to do is go through and actually find a way to get what is currently selected in the tree view. I'm pulling up the Glade interface designer to kind of start talking about something that's worthwhile mentioning here. So when you click on the GtkTreeView, you will actually note that in the tree here that there's an actual additional drop-down. And you'll see then that there's a GtkTree selection. In fact, that's what we're going to use to get the path to the item that we have selected. And so really the path is effectively the way to get to the data within the list view itself. Okay, so we're going to go through and remember we have our options here like general, packing, common. Packing and common are going to be empty, but general you can use an ID against that. But you can go through and then do signals here. And when you do then an option such as changed, you can go through and set up a changed signal. So I'm going to go through and do a set selected. I think I spelled that correctly. Enter, Control S to save that. And then I'm just going to go through and create a new method here. So df, and then of course we're going to do new function. We're going to get that replaced. Put self accordingly there. Okay, so this is something that's worthwhile mentioning or talking about now, and that is how to know what you need to add to a kind of a method that's being called from a signal, and what parameters are actually being passed to that method. So obviously one of the options is to just Google it. And of course that's totally valid and legitimate, but sometimes you may just want to make it quicker and look at through a different way. And actually the Glade Interface Designer gives you that option in the Signals tab. And basically it's these little red kind of orange buttons on the far right. You can click on one of them on the column for the signal, and it will tell you what data is transmitted to that method that you call. And really in this instance what we're seeing transmitted is actually specifically user data. So that's the one that we're going to, we want to be aware of that. And you'll see also here a note. And one of them, for in this instance is worthwhile being aware of is that, emitted whenever the selection has possibly changed. So they basically say take note that it may occasionally be emitted when nothing has actually happened. So that's useful to know because then we need to do some additional checks to ensure that the thing is doing what it should be doing. I'm also going to go ahead now and, of course, add user underscore data. You can name it whatever you want, obviously, but for me, I'm going to go through and just call it data. And then I'm going through and do selected equals user data. And when from there, the user data is actually going to be well, we'll see what I mean actually. So I'll go through and actually just show it in a second here. So I'm going to also, by the way, Control C. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to move that method. I'm going to create a global version. I think it's global or at least a class-based version. And we're going to go through and right now just set that to none. And then from there, we're just going to go through and do selected here. But we also need to go through and do self.selected equals selected at some point. We're not going to do it just yet, but I'm going to put that in there. And so we're just going to see what happens when we run this. And you'll see that we have, when we click on that, a GtkTree selection object. Okay? And so a GtkTree selection object, you could look it up, what it has, but I'm going to go through and just kind of quickly mention that one of the options that you can use is get selected. That's a method that you can use to get what is actually selected. Okay? So that's the method we're going to call on user data. So I'm going to do user data.get underscore selected, get selected, and then see what we now have instead of the GtkTree selection option. And what we have, at least in this instance, is that we see a list store option as well as a GtkTree iter item. Okay, and so the one that we're going to be most interested in right now is actually the GtkTree iter. And what the iter is the kind of the path to the data that you have clicked on. Okay, and so we're gonna actually set the selected the self.selected variable to the GtkTreeIter that that is being selected. Okay, so we're going to do that. And in this instance, by the way, again, like I said, it is worth noting that this could be a none object or fired in such a way that nothing is returned. So we are going to want to go through and do an if check in a moment. But first, we're going to go through and do not 0, but 1, because again, this is the TreeIter is in the second slot. And then we're going to do if, and then selected, colon, and then, of course, print selected. So that's going to give us our iter. We're going to put self.selected to there, and that is what we have for our selection. Now, to actually delete the entry, it's really straightforward. You literally can just take the path store, and then from there in the delete entry emit field, I'm going to do .remove, and I really don't apparently know how to spell. Fat finger the hell out of everything here, so remove, and then we're going to do self.selected. Self.selected is the one, again, that has the reference to the TreeIter option. And remember, the TreeIter option is the path, effectively. And so when we do a remove, we're effectively removing that path in the path list store, which then gets removed from the graphical interface. So we can go ahead and do just that. We can run Python. And so we can go through, and I will expand this here. And so I'm going to click on the bottom. I mean, I really could just click right there for user bin, delete it accordingly, right? It allows me now to delete it. All right, we have one more method to go, and that is the save to bash RC file or process, okay? So to do this part, the saving to bash RC, well, first off, we're not going to go through and do a backup. For testing, I would recommend you back up your own, but I've already got one backed up of my bash RC file, just because things can get messed up. Normally, again, you really should be creating a backup file through the program. I'm not going to do that just to save a little bit of time. Anyway, okay, so we have save to bash RC. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show what I'm talking about here, and really not that, but Control H, and then .bash rc. So we're going to just take that file and load it in here, and I'm just going to then kind of close that out. And I wanted to go ahead and reference here that I have the path right here. Export path is equal to path home and all that. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is basically use this well, if we have something like this in the file, we want to, when we read the file, we want to ignore it so that we can add it later. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that as a reference, actually, and so I'm just going to do Control V, path that, for that in a second here. All right, so what we're going to do is read the bash RC file, omit the export path if there is such a line, and then from there add our own export path equals line. Okay, so to do that, what we're going to do first is just create a list. So I'm just going to say paths equal list parentheses. Okay, and we're going to also go through, and we're going to need to actually get the iter. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm going to do the iter, okay? And the way we're going to get the iter is just by going through and doing the list store here, and then using one of the built-in methods or for that, which is get, what is it, get iter first, I think. I'm going to need to look at my notes, honestly, here. What is it here? Get iter first. Wow, okay, shit, I got it right. Okay, so get underscore iter underscore first parentheses. Okay, so what this does is it gets the first iter object within the list, and then we can use another method called get next to then allow us to go through and actually traverse the list store and basically get the values from that list store. Okay, now what we're going to do then here is we're going to actually need to do a while loop. So while, and actually, okay, I'm going to do while, to do this properly here, iter does not equal none, okay, then we're going to do two things, okay. So the first one is we want to append the paths, and so we're going to do just that. We're going to do paths.append, okay? And then from there, we're going to, of course, append it. So what we need to do is when we're appending it, we're going to actually do the get the list store again, and we're going to get then the value within the store. So we'll literally just do a get underscore value, okay, value parentheses. We're then going to pass that get value method 2 arguments. The iter, which we have already set to the first one, so iter, and then the column that iter is kind of like associated with. In this instance, we only have 1, so it's going to be 0. If you had multiple, then obviously you would need to modify the code to, to work properly. Okay. Now, once we've done that, what we need to do is iter or equals, and then from there we need to do the list store again. Okay, and then we just do iter next, iter underscore next, and then we pass that iter as well. So it references the current iter, gets the next one after that, and then from there assigns it to the iter, and then from there again, while iter is not equal to none, you're going to traverse that and then append those values from the list store. Once we have done that, what we can actually do is basically go through and create a, I'm going to call it a variable, so to export. We're going to do a to export, and then from there I'm going to actually just use the export path equals here, okay, and we're going to do this. We're going to do a backslash or quotation, because we're going to escape that quotation so we can have it in the string as well. And then what we're going to do is literally a single colon, and we're going to join the list. So paths, okay? Then, obviously, we need to finish the quotations. So we'll do a backslash and another quotation. And that's going to go through and add our export path variable with the proper quotations, as well as get the paths joined with the colon. Now, I highly recommend, I don't even say highly recommend, it is, you need to go through and add at least 1 new line, and I strongly urge you to add 2 new lines. So you'll escape the quotation, and then you'll add backslash n to create new lines, and that way you do not have export path accidentally have, when we append to this string, something that's like going to get merged onto that same path, because again, the path's going to get overwritten when we ignore it. So we want to keep this path separate from any of the other parts of the .bashrc file. Okay, so I would say, I'm just going to say it, you must do \n. It's just going to say, just do it. Just do it, otherwise you're going to screw up your bashrc, and then everything will just go wrong, and you'll cry, and you'll blame me or something. I don't know. Anyway, so, okay, we have our to export string, and from there, what we need to do now is open the file, okay? So we don't want to append to the file when we write it, so we solely want to read from this file, close it, and then write to this file, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go through and do file, and we're going to do equals, and then we're going to do open, okay? I'm going to give it then the bashrc path that we set up initially here, okay? And that's not doing what I wanted to do properly for me to select it here, so let me do it this way. And we're going to open it, comma, and then the mode is going to not be read, but oh, actually, excuse me, correct, it is going to be read. I apologize. Okay, I'll take that back. So it's going to read. We want to read line by line the information. So we have the for loop here, and then we're going to do line, and then we're just going to give it the file. Literally just say file, because that's the file that that's literally the variable that we gave it. From there, what we have then is we're going to take the to export name, okay? I'm going to take that to export, and I'm going to if it. So if and then we're going to do this, and I'm actually going to just kind of quickly pre-structure this here a little bit here, so that we can just kind of do it this way. So x2 export plus equals line, and then when we have this, the export path right here, this part, we're going to do if export path equals in line We're going to then say continue, because we don't want to do anything if that is in the line. So that means then whatever export line is in the bashrc file, it's going to get ignored, or any export paths in the file are going to get ignored when we append to this export string, okay? So once we have done that, we can take file, and by the way, I'm literally going to just also copy this, and what we're going to do then is take this, and we're going to take the mode to be W, and then what we're going to do also is I'm going to take that, Control-C that. I'm going to do file.close because it's proper to close your file streams. Okay. And we're also going to need to duplicate that anyway to close it again after we've written to the file. And so then from there, we do, file is equal to open self.bashrc path. We are in the write mode. And so all we literally do then is just file.write, okay? File.write, and then the two export paths. So we're going to take that export path. We're going to go through and write. Okay? Again, normally you really should go through and back up the file. I have already done so. It's in my downloads folder. So if I need to, back up or recover, I can do so. But I would say do it within the program, when you do it yourself. So, okay. Now, arguably, by the way, we really should probably wrap this into a try-catch block just to ensure that, we have all the things properly handled. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to Control-X this. I'm going to Control-V this. And then I'm going to take that and going to do a single tab to properly space this. And then when we do raise, we'll just do actually print and then E. In fact, what we'll do also actually is print parentheses writing to file opening / writing to file failed with the following. And then we'll just do / n just so that we have, kind of a little bit of more data and information and context to see where this is at. I want to go ahead and double check this actually. Let's see. So we have the iter, we have pathless store. We're going to do the iter next. We got that working. I'm not going to have an infinite loop. To export string, we've got that. I'm going to go ahead and move that actually over here, and then just to kind of structure and block this a little bit better. And okay, and then we've got, so we've got that. We've read it, we assigned it to the string, and then we're going to just want to write the modified version of the path. So everything looks good to me. Let's go ahead and cross our fingers and hope that that is the case. In this instance, I do not want to go get rid of anything because I want to keep my paths that I have, but we can go through and add multiples of a file so that we can go show path, plussing and deleting it. So I've added 3 instances. I go ahead and save it, and when I go up and pull this up, the file has been properly written such that when we go over and look at the paths, we'll see that we have the additional paths, GtkTuts, and all that. Okay? And again, we can then go through and modify this so that we can delete that. 1, 2, 3, 4, save, and boom. Now the path is shrunk and there are no GtkTuts in the path for our system. And we have, of course, proper spacing too, so launchpad config parts doesn't get destroyed, whatever. Okay, all right. I think that really covers everything that we wanted to do, at least for this mini program. Again, there are a lot of things that we can do to improve this. For instance, error handling. So for instance, if we had a proper bubble pop up, we could have this message printed with the stack trace. We could go through and do things like key input control so that we can actually, delete it just using the delete button on your keyboard. There are a lot of things we can do to improve this, but we will do so through another tutorial. At this point, though, we have summarized everything we needed to really do for the TreeView widget. I appreciate you all watching. Thank you very much for watching. Please rate, subscribe, tell me what you think, and I will talk to you all later.